On the Yara Dialogues this evening, our featured guest is Hoda Paripoush. She is the founder of Sloane Fine Tea Merchant. Hoda established Sloane Tea in 2007 with a vision and a mission to bring incredible tea from crop to cup. By 2019, Sloane Tea had become one of Canada's top leading tea companies. Hoda and her tea empire were featured everywhere, in Forbes Travel Guide, in the National Post, in the Huffington Post, in the Globe and Mail, and in Toronto Life, to name a few. Hoda's heavenly teas and her elegantly packaged products could be found in Canada's top restaurants across the country and in some of North America's best hotels. Then the pandemic hit. The effect of COVID-19 was devastating on the food and beverage industry. Tonight, Hoda, a mother of 3 young children, is here to share her incredible entrepreneurial journey with us. She will talk to us about how it all started, the lessons learned, and her resilience in the face of challenges faced over the years. Leading the conversation tonight is Roxana Tavana. We are so pleased to have Roxana back. She was one of our moderators at the Yara Leadership Conference held in Toronto in 2019. Roxana is currently a partner at Greyhawk Investment Strategies, Inc., where she works with clients on their wealth and family office needs. She was previously an executive at the Bank of Nova Scotia, where she led various businesses, including as president and CEO of Scotia Trust, working with some of Canada's most successful families in navigating their wealth and legacy goals. Roxana began her career as a securities lawyer at one of Toronto's top law firms. When Roxana, a mother of 3, isn't busy as a member of the Greyhawk Senior Leadership Team, she devotes her time as a member of the board of directors of METRAC, a nonprofit organization that is working to end violence against women and youth. Yara is so pleased to bring these 2 phenomenal women together to discuss the journey of entrepreneurs, how it starts, how to survive, and how to succeed. Tonight's episode of the Yara Dialogue is sponsored by Greyhawk Investment Strategies, Inc. We are so grateful to them for their generous sponsorship. As a multi-family office and an independent chief investment office, Greyhawk combines quality investing with a range of office services to prepare families and their generations for sustainable wealth and stewardship. Greyhawk has expanded nationally over the last year with a specific focus on growing its leadership team to include women. The Greyhawk purpose and philosophy are rooted in the core values of independence, transparency, authenticity, and resilience. Without further ado, I turn it over to Roxana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Atusa, for that introduction. I'm so pleased today to be here with Hoda Paripoush, who is the founder of Sloane Tea. Sloane Tea is a boutique, direct trade, Canadian-based tea company, specializing in the import, blending, and packaging of whole leaf specialty teas. I have had the privilege of knowing Hoda now for a few years, and what she has built and been able to achieve, in particular in these last few years, is nothing short of remarkable. So I'm truly pleased to bring her to you today through Yara. Sloane Teas was founded in 2009. And I'm going to ask you, Hoda, to just maybe share with us a little bit about the story of Sloane Tea in terms of the products you have and where we can find those products, some of your main clients out here in Canada, just to give people a picture of Sloane Tea.
Absolutely. Well, we are a tea company, so our product is tea, essentially. However, we have many different forms, and I would say our offering has really evolved as the demands from our clientele have evolved and what they need in order to be successful. So originally, we started out with beautiful tea caddies, or you might have seen these little tins containing loose leaf tea, and that was our core offering. And that was essentially available at gift shops, and then it kind of launched into boutique grocery, and it's of course available online. But as our demand for the food service market evolved, well, working with loose leaf tea wasn't necessarily always functional in their environment. So we now have our pyramid tea bags, and we now have individually wrapped pyramid tea bags for use for self-service or in spas or banquets you might see. And some of the places you might see the products include anywhere from your local cafe, as well as boutique grocery. And then from an overall experience, from like food service and spa, we cater establishments such as the Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis Toronto, as well as the Art Gallery of Ontario and Langdon Hall. So we cater towards the experience, and that experience could be in, a tiny restaurant in your neighborhood, but it can also be in a larger venue such as a hotel.
So, you come from very humble background, as I know, and you are now dealing with, and you have been dealing these last few years with such luxury brands. And in the last year and a bit, huge opportunities with Via Rail and Porter Airlines in terms of getting your brand out and partnering with these great establishments in Canada. There was something, I wanted to ask you about tea in particular. So maybe you could just share with us, just, so people get a lens into you a little bit. If you could have tea with any one person, this afternoon, tell us who it would be and why.
Okay. Do they have to be living?
They don't have to be living.
Okay. So I've thought a lot about this because a part of me would love to have tea with Nelson Mandela, but I will say, I would really love to have tea with Michael Jackson, because I would love to see if I could see him do the moonwalk in person. So,
And do you know if Michael Jackson was a tea drinker, or it's just aspirational?
he was a pretty peaceful, I don't know, it's mostly aspirational, to be honest, but I think he was the type of person that would indulge even if he wasn't a tea drinker, just because, his entire life was catered towards, doing things to entertain other people. So I'm sure he would have a cup of tea with me.
So tell us a little bit about, the concept of Sloane Tea. There's something you shared with me that I wanted to bring up, because I found it really warmed my heart when I think about the business you've built and what you've done, and how you've really brought this special concept that you had into a flourishing business. Not everybody's able to do that. And you shared with me the power of moments, and what tea meant for you in terms of the power of moments for you as a young girl, and then with your family as well. Maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about that, and then maybe turning that passion and that special place for you that tea held into an actual business that has become very successful.
Absolutely. So, I'm Persian, born in India. So two very big tea drinking nations. However, I'm also the child of immigrants, but more than just immigrants, religious refugees. I'm a Baha'i, my family's Baha'i, and in Iran it's a religious minority. So when the regime changed, they very quickly left. And in the process, they also lost an 11-year-old daughter in Iran. And so there was a lot of uncertainty and trauma. They went to India, they lived there for 10 years. That's where I was born. And they eventually were accepted into Canada. So I was about 3.5 at that point. And so my parents came to Canada with 3 children, no understanding of English. And since they had lost everything in Iran, I think they had like $1,000 and 3 kids. And they went into a city, Brockville, where there wasn't a huge support network, and it was certainly not diverse, and it didn't, it's gotten a lot better since, but there was a lot of racial tension essentially growing up. And so the odds were always there. There were already so many mountains to climb because you're dealing with trauma, relocation, and you don't have much of a support network. And so your entire focus is on survival. So despite the uncertainty, and I was blessed in the sense that I was the youngest, so when you're a child, you kind of just go with the flow. Life is what it is, and you don't know any different. But as you grow and you get older, you realize, wow, my life's a little different than my peers, my classmates. But the one part of the day that was always solace filled, and despite the uncertainty, despite the obstacles or the fatigue or the frustration, that we all came together for, was tea time. So it was the first beverage of the day, and it was the last beverage of the night. From when I was a child, I've been drinking tea in different forms from probably before I can remember, to be honest. But it was really the beverage that my mother rarely asked me, "Did you have your cup of water?" It was always, "Did you have your tea?" And so we would always come back together around tea. So that moment, taking the time to connect, even if, and by connection, I don't mean necessarily that words were exchanged, because at times everyone was just too exhausted to talk,
Right.
too stressed, or as a child, you don't know, it's just quiet, but you don't know the reason for the quiet. You just assume everyone's calm. But at least we all came together and shared that cup of tea, whether it was me dipping, bread and butter into sweet tea, or whether it was, a sugar cube on the side of my cheek, inside of my cheek. It was just, that experience was always there. And so as I grew older, tea became a center point for calm. So through schooling, through university, through difficult moments, I always came back to, okay, what do I need? I never gravitate towards Tylenol, aspirin, or any pain
Right.
medication. It's always tea. And for me, tea symbolizes a moment, a simple experience. It's accessible for the most part, despite where you live, despite where you come from. And so it's an element that connects people. It's a bridge. And no matter where I have traveled throughout the world, um, I've been to many countries. Most of the countries I visited, I actually don't even speak the language. But the language has never been a barrier in terms of me connecting, because tea itself is a symbol of warmth and hospitality. It's a sign of welcome. And that welcome, taking that moment to connect with someone else or with yourself, is what always attracted me to tea. And I've said this many times to many people, but I really believe there's nothing that a cup of tea cannot at least ameliorate. I
So,
Yes.
no, I was going to say, so I can see, very clearly why this is something you would want to bring to people, right? Especially with that personal experience. And, there's so many of us in the world that we have a dream, we have a passion. There's something that warms our heart the way tea did for you and does for you. How do you take something like that and turn it into a business and a viable business, and tell us maybe at the beginning stages, how did you build this? We're going to get into some more exciting stuff about how you've been navigating this pandemic this past year, which um, I'm eager to hear about, because I know you've actually been able to achieve much success in this past year, which is remarkable. But tell us how you actually translated this passion into a vocation.
It was somewhat organic and somewhat due to a lot of naivety. So, because had I known what I was really getting into, manufacturing of a product that's not even grown in North America, I may have made other plans. But the beauty of, ignorance is bliss at times. And I had left naturopathic medicine because I realized, I love health and healing, but, for me, healing is taking that moment to sip and savor that cup of tea. But I grew up drinking tea, but I really had no experience, A, in business, or B, in how to create a product. So I said to myself, well, what can I do to become knowledgeable? And so I started researching, where can I go to be educated on tea? And at the time, coincidentally, there was an exposition on tea in Las Vegas. So I attended that. And once you attend an exposition, you connect with other people, tea makers, tea producers. And so I started to kind of connect in the industry that I wanted to be in. And I was a nobody. I was just a girl with a dream who loved tea, but didn't actually know much about it. And so I was very honest and I said, I want to learn. So please teach me. And I found that people were more than willing to teach, and to the point where I said, I want to come to your tea garden in India. And, you know, they said, sure, come, not really taking me seriously. But, 3 months later, I called them. I said, I'm coming to India. Can I come and visit your estate? And when I went to the estate, I then went to about 14 other estates. And so everything's very connected. And I was able to actually meet mentors that to this day are pivotal in um, my learning experience and in how I shape the business. So having those connections in terms of just asking people for support, asking people for help, putting it out there made a big difference. And I knew that packaging is important to me because beauty, the beauty of experience is very much part of tea time for me, whether it's the vessel you're drinking out of or whether it's the aroma of the tea leaf. So I knew I needed something brilliant in quality, but the packaging and the aesthetic was extremely important. And so all I had was a concept and a dream with no study of whether like the business concept would really be viable. I just knew this is what I had to do. Now, as I got into the thick of things, I realized, okay, I want this beautiful package. But it's a custom tooling fee and it's produced overseas. So you start to realize, okay, there's obviously very heavy costs associated with starting this. And I had to go in knowing that I would have to make personal sacrifices, whether that meant not purchasing a home or
Right.
whatever that meant. I knew I had to go into it being okay with the trajectory of how my life would play out may be different than what I had expected beforehand.
So let me ask you, Hoda, it sounds like your open-mindedness, your desire to learn, the fact that you showed a little bit of vulnerability, right? As you were trying to figure out this whole tea landscape helped you in terms of building that network and building the connections and really learning what you had to do. When you were going through that, were you thinking about this as a business or were you just on a learning path, and that relates to your passion?
No, I certainly was very focused on building a foundation for success. And that to me meant having connections with the source. And for me, the source meant, the tea producers, the farmers, because ultimately we don't grow tea in North America. And so I knew that being a very small was an understatement, to be honest, because I was a girl with a dream. I didn't really even have a business. I knew that the only way to have the support network that I would need to have access to some of the best crops produced in the world, I would need to convince them that I was worth investing in. And so I had to be vulnerable. I had to show them my passion and my obsession. To this day, I have the notebook on my desk. And when I speak with Harsh or so many of these other people, they always cite it. I walked around with a notepad, almost as if I was a reporter, recording every single detail because I wanted to absorb as much as I possibly could.
That's amazing. So now you translate this into a business, it starts to flourish. There must have been some fear, right? Now you talked a little bit about sacrifice and making those hard decisions in order to build a business as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
But talk to us a little bit about, maybe one moment even that was the scariest for you. And how did you move past it?
So, growth and any uncertainty is uncomfortable. And I remember I'm a big fan of, motivational speakers and Eric Thomas and Anthony Robbins. And were many moments where I felt anxious and fearful because I struggle with uncertainty, but it's kind of an oxymoron because it's really the only thing that's certain. But I realized in one of the things that I had read and been told was the degree of the quality of your life is in direct proportion with the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably live with. And so I wanted a really high quality of life. So I had to become comfortable with a high degree of uncertainty and expand my comfort zone and be able to be detached. And if that meant I have a great potential customer that would give me a lot of exposure all throughout Canada, but I have to invest in product first and then wait 90 to 120 days to hopefully be paid and they don't go bankrupt, because I have had customers that have gone bankrupt in the process. I had to be comfortable living with those consequences.
And so, Hoda, what's your advice to, I mean, there's so many people out there that have a passion, right?
Mhm.
And, clearly learning and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. But the advice around pushing through that kind of fear, and for you, some of the decisions you made around delaying a home purchase, and we know you're a mother of three, so you did this all while also trying to build a family. And so what's your advice to people who want their dream and are going to think about it in these terms that you've just said, in terms of being vulnerable and going out and learning, but how do you get past the fear? How do you make the decision that this is worth making this particular sacrifice for?
You know, the way I viewed it was, I read a book called Fear the Fear and Do It Anyway by Suzanne Jeffers. But I read that many years prior. But I remember, no matter what path you take, A or B, there's always going to be goodies along the way. And I just kept holding on to that no matter what decision I make, the result will lead to a different life or a different set of outcomes. But there will be blessings and results along the way. And I've had the privilege, I'll say it now, because as when you're going through it, it doesn't seem like a privilege, but growing up with a lot of uncertainty. And I would say probably more hardship than I would say my peers experienced, just because I was an immigrant. And there's just by default, your experience of society is not going to be the same as someone who was born and raised in Canada and like generationally. So when I thought about the risks I would have to take, they paled in consequence or in relation to the risks my parents had to take to immigrate for our freedom. So they left a country that they grew up in, where they spoke the language. They moved to a country that they didn't speak the language, being India, and they had no way of financially earning income in India. And then they were accepted into Canada, into a country where, again, they don't speak the language, and now they're older and they have 3 children. And they really had no clue where they were going. They just had a sense of duty to protect their young. And
So you watched a lot of, resilience in action,
yes,
right? When you watched
absolutely.
your parents. And I mean, it's very clear that going through what you went through, you also have, a strong concept of resilience as well. And I want to get into that a little bit, but there was something you shared with me about how you title yourself informally in the company. And maybe we can share that with our audience. So you told me that, you use the C-suite acronym CHO. And
Mhm.
can you tell us what that means?
Yes, it means Chief Hustling Officer. Because, yes, I'm a creative director, but I will say the thing I do the most and the results that our company has achieved is not just based on my hustle, but on hustle in general. But when I was starting the company, I did not have a staff. I did not have any staff. It was, everything started from my kitchen and then graduate to a separate room. So, but the hustle and heart, I remember reading on a candle, will set you apart. And it means that you have to let go of ego. You have to detach yourself from what you think you should be doing and do what you need to be doing. Because when you run a company or when you're starting a business, there's really no business without customers. So you need to be able to deal with rejection after rejection after rejection and still smile. You need to be able to pull an all-nighter if it means your customer gets their package that day. You need to go out of your way to look for an opportunity or to ask people, who do you know that I could reach out to? It means that you have to be on even when you want to be off.
That's actually that last piece that you said, you need to be on even when you want to be off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, a lot of us can relate to that, not just in business, but also in our personal lives, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
I remember going
particular,
for dinners with, friends or, my husband. And in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, I need to reach out to the food and beverage manager before I leave, or I need to get that name because I wonder what tea program they have. I was always thinking, how is this an opportunity?
And so, when you think about this term resiliency, I heard you say that when you were growing up, part of the struggle for your family and for you was there was really no support network.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I also heard you say that as you were building your brand, one of the most important things for you was building this network and network of people that clearly, were part of your achievements in terms of sources of knowledge, influencers, and all of that. But, talk to us a little bit about the network of advisors, the support system that you have built now for yourself, because, I know that you grew up without that, but I also know how important it has been for you to build that around yourself and for your family. So maybe share with everybody, what is that network looking like today? And how can someone go about prioritizing making sure that they actually have advisors and a support and a backbone for when times do get tough? Because, we can all pull from our resiliency, but, part of the resiliency is also what you've built around you to help you through those moments, like the resiliency of the structure and the support network around yourself.
Absolutely. And it's a critical factor. And for me, it developed very much organically, but I will say early on, I identified one individual that wasn't in the tea industry, but was doing and living the life, or at least part of the life that I wanted to live in the future. And I very early on asked her, will you be my mentor?
Hoda, what was it about her life? What was it that you saw that you said, this is how I want to live my life in the future?
I saw that she had a beautiful relationship with her kids. I saw that she was extremely educated, but she was also very humble and kind. And I wanted to know that if I'm ever successful, I don't ever want to lose perspective of the reality of how I got there.
And so is she one of your mentors today still?
Absolutely.
And so how do
Personally
you
and professionally.
and how do you water that relationship? How do you maintain that relationship over the long term?
So we went for a lot of lunches. We've traveled together.
Presumably you've had a lot of tea.
Oh my gosh, we've had, in fact, as much, and this is how important it is to find the right mentor, because she identified something in me that I had not yet identified or had the courage to identify. Because growing up, I thought I would go into the medical field. And I said to her, I tried to sell her some spa packages because I was hustling, trying to pay for school. And, she didn't need them, but she bought them. And she said to me, I really don't see you as a naturopath. She has a naturopath. It has nothing to do with, the industry, but she knew in me that there was something that something else I needed to do. I had a different gift that I needed to share. And she said that to me before I even thought about it. And she was the first person to ever take me for afternoon tea. And the person I've experienced, she said, you know what, let's go for afternoon tea, because she knew my love of tea. And she supported anything that I had as an idea. She supported, even if she thought it wasn't necessarily the greatest idea, so that I could live with the consequences and learn that lesson that needed to be learned.
So now let's take resiliency to a whole other level. You are, I remember seeing a picture of you next to an airplane, a Porter airplane on the cover of a magazine. You just got this incredible win. You're going to be Porter's tea brand. You're in Via Rail. You're in all these luxury hotels, and so you're really getting to the clients and the customers that you want to get to in a big way. And then there's a pandemic.
Yes.
And what I'm really interested in hearing is, how did you pivot? But when did you pivot? When did you decide as an entrepreneur and as a business leader that I need to make a change and I need to make it fast? Because one of the things I think this year has proven for a lot of businesses is that weren't able to pivot is the timing potentially of that and the cadence as to when do you pivot and how do you pivot. And so, just share with us. It's March of last year. It's a year ago now.
Yeah.
Let's put ourselves into that mind frame. The pandemic is upon us, but it's at the beginning stages. What are you doing? What are you doing with Sloane?
So it's very interesting because it's very, very vivid in my mind still, because sometimes I still have to pinch myself to believe this happened. And I was visiting customers. Usually when I line up my meetings out of the office, I line them up so that I'm on the road for most of that day. And I was visiting, clients / friends in the industry. And one by one, I started to get cancellation emails and phone calls. And I even would show up I showed up at one hotel to meet with the food and beverage manager who's been there for 14 years. And he came up to me and said, I'm so sorry, I forgot to cancel our meeting. I've just been let go. And it was kind of like, I had chills. I had customers saying, I'm sorry, we can't meet. I don't know when we'll be able to meet or if we can ever meet because this is happening. And so I very quickly realized this is greater than anything that I have been prepared to deal with. And that everyone is scrambling to figure out how to get to the next 24 hours. It was hard to even at the beginning plan for a week because it was literally taken moment by moment. And luckily, fortunately, when you're a boutique, also known as small company, you're able to be a bit more agile. You're able to pivot and react quickly because you don't have as many layers to go through. And we have a small but extremely dedicated and understanding team. And we very quickly realized, okay, within a week, we were down 40% of our wholesale. And the week after that, we had lost 80% of our wholesale customers. And by wholesale, I mean cafes, restaurants, hotels, anyone who's purchasing the tea to serve to their customers. And that was the largest wake-up call because in my mind previously, I said, oh, nothing can shake the food and beverage industry. Nothing. And lo and behold, it did overnight. It shook the world, but our industry has felt it in a different way because most of it's been unable to operate, and for the greater portion of the year. But some of the changes we really made, we took a really hard look at what do we need to keep in order to do what we need to do. What we do is we sell tea, we import, we blend, and we package and distribute or sell tea. So what is critical to that? And one of the hardest decisions for me was realizing, okay, this didn't happen the first week, but it happened within, the month or two after, was our cupping studio that was newly built and beautiful and was my dream. We realized, well, that's not really critical to the success of the business right now.
But Hoda, that must have been an extremely difficult decision, because at that moment in time, not everybody knew what was going to happen next, right? I mean, we were really living, as you said, day to day, week to week. And so you could have held on a little longer.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
but I suspect that making the decision when you did turned out to be the right thing for the business. And so, but how did you do that? How did you get first of all, the insight, but also the courage to say, no, I'm just going to let this go? How did you do that?
Well, we realized, okay, let's look at our financials, because in the nature of our industry is that, things are constantly you get billed and then you pay on, upon receipt or upon shipping. But a lot of the larger companies pay, within 30 days, etc. And so we very quickly realized that we need to recoup whatever we can that's outstanding. And sometimes that means taking a hit on what's owed. So it's better to get a little bit rather than nothing, even if it's not the full amount that you're due. It meant that we had to we did temporarily, within a few weeks, let go of our staff, telling them that this is a decision we're making temporarily, just so we don't understand the larger consequences of how the government support's going to roll out for use, but we want you to be one of the first to access it if it takes time. It meant, and they've all come back. Our team is fully on board, but in that moment, it was a bit of a scary moment, because this is your family. It's your Sloane family, your team members that have supported you, and you really don't know what to tell them, and they're looking to you for guidance and support. And I am fortunate also, my husband, and he has his own business, but he does support me and Sloane as well. He's less emotionally attached to the cupping studio, to creative concepts, because he's a bit more subjective. Actually, he's extremely subjective about it. And sorry, not subjective.
Objective. Yeah.
Objective. Yeah. I'm the subjective one. And that's critical, because when you're an artist, your natural inclination is to go down with the ship. This is what I've helped build, and I'm going to go down with it, whatever that means. But you need to realize this is not just about you. This is about your team members. This is about your customers that have been supporting you for the past decade, and who want to make sure they have access to the experience of your tea 2 months from now. This is no longer about Hoda and her cupping studio.
And her passion.
And my passion. This is about the survival of the business, and you need to ruthlessly, and I mean ruthlessly, prioritize what is critical now to be able to do what you're doing later.
I love that long-term. You really took a long-term lens. And it sounds like your husband is part of your board of advisors.
Oh,
right?
Yes, 100%.
So, I wanted to ask you, I want to make sure I ask you, a few other things, just, out of curiosity, right? You are a very successful woman. What is it that you notice about someone when you first meet them?
Oh, without a doubt, their eyes.
Tell me about that.
I feel like, the eyes are the window to the soul. So I very quickly have a sense of whether I can trust someone or not. And luckily I've most people I meet, I trust very easily. I'm a very trusting person, but their eyes tell me a lot about how, who they are. It's like it's a window into their soul, into a little bit of the life they've had, but I really sense kindness from their eyes.
Well, I love that. And it's completely in line with what we've seen of your personality today. So now let's go back for a minute. So you struggled, you were resilient, you pushed through, you made some hard decisions. Tell us where Sloane is at now after this year of tough decisions and hardship. Um, I heard that you're actually in a better place than you were a year ago before
We're,
pandemic. Is that
yeah,
true?
it's true. We're actually, you know, we're more profitable than we were before because we cut unnecessary expenses. So the process was not glamorous at all, but the result and the fruits of, you know, very hard decision making. It's like being a plant and it's pruned and it looks really ugly at first, but then it blossoms. It's Sloane Tea now. We're still here. We're thriving, and we can't wait until the hospitality industry comes back. The food and beverage world returns to what it was, but we are not naive to the fact that that's going to take a long time. And though we see hope in the very near future of customers returning and calling and opening up and transforming, it's very humbling because you have a cafe and a small family that's put their life savings into that little cafe, and then they had to hustle and become a bodega so that they can continue to operate and pay their rent essentially. And so we're really fortunate to understand to be in a position where we're still servicing some wholesalers, but our online business, essentially because people weren't able to go out to their local cafes and retailers to purchase their tea, our online direct to customer, direct to consumer, that really kind of surprised us. We were always online since the beginning. Since Sloane started, we always had a website, we always sold online, but it was never the focus of the company. It was always just a backup in case you were in a location where you didn't have access to a local retailer that sold our product. And now we sell into the US, and essentially when you're an online business, if people like your product, they usually come back to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the engagement grow. More people want to know what we're doing because our newsletter followership has grown. It's been incredible to realize, okay, at the end of the day, people just want to know they can get tea, whether it's in their home. And right now it's mostly in their home because they really can't go anywhere else.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were really able to pivot. It sounds like you pivoted a little bit your distribution model, but also your brand somewhat, right? From really being a home brand, as opposed to only just the luxury brand in the incredible hotels and so forth that you were known for. So I think that's very interesting, the fact that you were willing to do this, to have that long-term lens. Um, Speaking of long term, I know you know this, but a lot of the work that I do in my business is around the multi-generational concept,
Mm-hmm.
multi-generational businesses, multi-generational wealth. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I know you have three young children, and looking up at you, they see this role model and this incredible woman who has built a brand, built a business, and clearly your heart and soul is in this. Talk to us about, the multi-generational component of your business and how you see your children fitting in, and, just from your heart, but also advice that you have, because I'm sure you've thought of this as you're building your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. More recently than obviously when I started the business, because the whole term multi-generational is new to me, because very little of my life has been multi-generational, being a first to do many things. I was the first in my family to graduate university and the first to kind of really start a business. And when I started the business, my family was not necessarily, or my parents were very worried because of the fact that they were not, in Iran, Baha'is to this day can't go to university. So they came from a world of scarcity, that you need to do something where you will be able to support your family. And they came to Canada for us to have a better future. So when I started this business, I had the privilege of having parents who worked incredibly hard to give me the opportunity to even think about going against the grain. And so with that, I said, I wasn't happy in the program, in the path I was pursuing previously. So I would never want my children to feel limited in their roles professionally. I want them to pursue their passion, keeping in mind that there's a cost to that. But what I will say is, of course, when you've built a brand and a company whose goal is to create moments of beauty for people, you don't want to see that end with your departure. You want to see that continue. And I think it's important because each of my children, have very different personalities, as every child does. And I think it's important to be able to find roles that allow their passion or that little bit of shimmer that they have in their lives to show forth in your company or in the family business. I think it's important to find roles that feed that creative or feed that element of themselves that they would otherwise go elsewhere looking to nourish.
Yeah, I commend you for that, because coming at it and not thinking about a preset role or a preset vision of how you could see this passing to your children, but rather wanting to bring them into the fold for just who they are.
Yes.
And trying to make space for them, if possible.
Make space for them.
Anyways, I commend you for that. One last question for you. Tell us what your favorite tea is at Sloane Tea. I know that's a hard one, but tell us your favorite. And then could you describe for me, so if I take that tea tomorrow and I want to enjoy it in the home with my family, what in your view is necessary to create that perfect moment of beauty?
Well, to create the perfect moment of beauty, as much as I want to say you need, bone china and this and that, you really just need presence. You need to be present. And for me, that is key in terms of even how we design the packaging. If you see our little caddies, our tins of tea, it's about taking the moment to open that lid and smell the aroma wafting out of that caddy. It's about taking that spoon and lifting up the tea leaves and pouring them into your strainer or whatever it is. So presence is key. And I will say Heavenly Cream is certainly our kind of like our Sloane signature. It's the tea
That's what I have.
known for. It's a beautiful blend of, Sri Lankan or Ceylon, as we call it in the tea industry, and Assam with bergamot and Madagascar vanilla. But I will say the tea that I drink the most throughout the day is Earl Grey. It's a classic. And the reason why is because I love bergamot. I'll wear it. I will inhale it. I love bergamot so much. But Heavenly Cream and Earl Grey, I will say, are the two probably most popular teas. Our Earl Grey is heavily, cloaked in bergamot. And if you're going to, make a beautiful cup or pot of tea, I strongly recommend to, boil the water fully. Allow it to boil. And whatever vessel you're going to drink out of, whether you're going to make it into a pot or in a mug or Esticon, whatever it is, to preheat that vessel for 30 seconds just to get the actual material in the vessel heated, and then discard that water, pour in some fresh water, put your tea inside as well, or pour the water on top of the tea and let it steep for about 5 minutes. That's what I would say is incredible. But if you can be present and just kind of listen to the roar of that water boil, or listen to, the sound it makes when the water is, you know, touching the tea leaves, like just be present and smell the aroma wafting from it. And when you take that first sip, let that sit on your palate, see if you can taste the flavors and explore a little, taking that moment. My son does that all the time. He is so in the moment that I envy it sometimes, that he experiences everything to the fullest. And, that's what tea is for us, for our brand. It's an affordable luxury. It's about creating a moment of connection, whether that's with someone else or whether that's with yourself. So creating that presence in a very simple, but yet beautiful and very enjoyable, pleasurable way.
Well, I think that given what's going on right now in the world, your sort of description of mindfulness over a cup of tea is perfect and would probably make everyone's day better. Hoda, just on a personal note, you are an inspiration to me, and I know to many. Incredible to have built what you did from your heart. Many of us don't have the courage to do that. And I know that you are a fantastic mother. So thank you for spending time with me today. I look forward to being able to have tea with you in person one time again, hopefully this year at some point. But anyways, our thanks from Yara and from me personally for spending
thank you guys so
time
much.
with me.
Thank you.